Start?
Yep.
All right, this meeting is called to order, and we will begin with roll call. Commissioner Thomas.
She's still having trouble.
Okay. Commissioner Norton.
Here.
Commissioner Fox.
Here.
Commissioner Rundeck. Commissioner Wallen.
Here.
Commissioner White.
Here.
And Councilmember Harris.
Here.
Thank you. I will move on to the land acknowledgement. The Flagstaff Open Space Commission humbly acknowledges the ancestral homelands of this area's indigenous nations and original stewards. These lands, still inhabited by native descendants, border mountains sacred to indigenous peoples. We honor them, their legacies, their traditions, and their continued contributions. We celebrate their past, present, and future generations who will forever know this place as home. Next is the approval of the April 22nd, 2024 meeting minutes as published. Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the minutes are approved as written. At this time, any member of the public may address the commission on any subject that is not scheduled before the commission on this day. The Arizona Open Meeting Law prohibits the commission from discussing or taking action on an item which is not listed on the prepared agenda. Commission members may, however, respond to criticism made by those addressing the commission, ask staff to review a matter, or ask that a matter be placed on a future agenda. To address the commission on an item that is on the agenda, please wait for the chair to call for public comment at the time the heard. Is there any member of the public that wishes to address the commission on anything that is not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to our business items. And the first is the Observatory Mesa Trail planning. Robert, you want to provide us a
Yeah, great, thanks. Please appreciate that. This is a continuation of our discussion from last month. So we made some great progress on the commission's recommendation to the open space section. We're going to continue that discussion looking at mountain bike alignments and e-bike. So we've invited Mark Loseth from SDR to continue that conversation. Come on up and join us, Mark.
Thank you, Robert.
Get your slide deck. Start.
Okay, we have short presentation for you all today. This was modified from last month, so there's a few slides at the beginning, kind of reminder slides, and then really similar to last month. Apologies. Thank you all for having me today at the Open Space Commission. Forgot to thank you. Similar to last time, we want to just check in to make sure that what we heard is correct. And if any of the commissioners want to let us know that we heard wrong, we're here to make sure today that we're getting as accurate of a picture as we can, moving forward for the update for the plan. So with that, Rob, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so here's the reminder of where we're at right now as far as the concept alignments and the proposed trails for inclusion or adoption. Same numbers as last time. This is the same slide from last month. Next slide. Okay, so really what we kind of heard, we kind of grouped it 5 themes that we had from 2 meetings ago, as far as kind of the discussion topics that you all had brought up regarding the plan and any concerns and comments that you had. So what we heard for the maintenance, enforcement, and funding, the recognized interest in including language to that effect in the plan about what we're going to do to address it, and recognizing the, maybe the gaps in funding or capacity and some ideas surrounding that. And so at last month's meeting, we communicated to you all that these elements will be included in the plan, and we're working on draft language now that will be included and also to be reviewed by the open space program. Next slide, please. Okay, balancing preservation and recreation. At last month's meeting, I kind of referred to it as the balance with the capital B, right? As far as trail density, avoiding sensitive areas and habitats and providing experiences that folks are looking for. The variety of experiences and that range that folks that use trails are seeking. So at last month's meeting, what we heard was you all did support the idea of the connector trail that heads north out of Observatory Mesa Natural Area that connects to the Fort Valley Trailhead. And we also heard that at this time, you all do not have further recommendations to make regarding that balance. Now, we're always open to more information if you all had it, but that's what we heard at last meeting. And so that's kind of what we have reflected in our notes and what we're moving forward with as far as the plan amendment. Next slide, please. Trail designation. So this referred to the idea that, we were mulling around as far as our planning process goes about single-use trails, directional only trails, what the opportunities could look like and who would benefit from that. And at the last meeting, we heard from the commission that you would be likely recommending that all trails within the system are multi-use and bi-directional. Mountain biking. Okay, so now this is getting into the point now where we did not hear any sort of final, I don't know if resolution is the right word, but kind of final language on recommendations about these elements that we've been talking about. And so we did hear that the commission prefers that multi-use trails be constructed and that no mountain biking specific features be constructed on the new trails that are being proposed in the system. We also heard, and this was at the tail end of the meeting last month, there was a discussion surrounding Trail 3.36, or what's referred to around town as hot pockets. And we did not hear any type of resolution on that, and we heard that there would be more discussion needed, which is likely happening today. And so outstanding as of now, but looking forward to your thoughts on this topic today at this meeting. And then final slide for what we heard is e-bikes. And so we did chat about e-bikes a little bit. We talked about some of the options that could be considered, both by the open space program and by the commission as far as recommendations are concerned. And what we heard at last meeting was more discussion is needed. I think the following slide, Robert, still includes, yeah. So here are the options that we touched on at last meeting that could be, this slide could be potentially useful for more conversation today as far as the e-bikes go. And then this slide is just in case it makes sense to have everything all on one slide to kind of help with your discussions and conversations. And again, if we didn't get something right on this, we really want to make sure that we're on the same page as you all. And also, recognizing that, mountain bike trails, or as far as adopting trails that are kind of geared more for mountain bikes, is a little bit outstanding. We just want to make sure that we're on the same page. And so I think that's it for my presentation. I'm here to answer any questions that you all have. I'm here to provide any sort of numbers that I have at my fingertips on my computer, and look forward to what you'll have to say. And the following slide for this is just that comparison of the maps again, right? So it felt like this was useful to you all at last meeting, so we kept it all on the presentation today, just in case some of these resources are useful.
Is that it from you for now?
For now.
For now.
Thank you.
Any commissioners have any questions or follow-up?
Just a comment.
Please.
Thank you.
Yeah, try to keep it concise. Yeah, appreciate it.
That was concise. Thank you, for sure. I think one of the issues that he actively captured was the decision around hot pockets specifically, and this idea of designated mountain bike trails. I think last time we left it at, weren't quite sure, or we weren't quite ready, maybe as a commissioner, maybe I wasn't, maybe I was the holdout. So is that appropriate now for us to discuss that? I think we can probably reach a potential recommendation here. on that issue if everybody's ready to discuss it. And I can lead off and say that I personally am fine with the no single designation mountain bike only trails, with this asterisk of how are we going to manage the hot pockets is everywhere on all the trail. I mean, it's on trail forks. It's all over the place, right? I mean,
Yes, it
it's
is.
a pretty well-known trail as a mountain biker. I can tell you, it's, you know, so there will be derivative efforts that somebody will have to undertake to rehab that area and that education, even potentially enforcement, et cetera. But in terms of single direction mountain bike trails, I'm fine with making a recommendation going forward that that's not part of the plan here, but obviously for us to discuss that.
Yeah, I'll jump in there. Yeah, non-directional trips. I reread the deed, Arizona State Parks deed, conservation deed. And there's no way I can, from that deed, from that wording, justify 3.36. It's unfortunate that it was put in before this was all being discussed. It's unfortunate that there are a few. I don't think there are a lot of people that use that, because you really have to be an athlete to use that particular hot pocket. That might be the draw for that small group. I run the Mount Eldon trails. There are a number of trails up there that can rival, not a number, but there are a few that can rival hot pocket. They are as adjacent to the city as hot pocket is. So I can see all the reasons for that small group of people that actually use it and have the athletic ability to use it. But I don't think it fits general plan. It don't fit the deed. And I have a few quotes here from the deed under the subtitle of purpose. Whereas, and then goes on, elevations, crevice drainages, and sloping terrain supported diversity of plant and wildlife. It goes on to say that's why it should be preserved. Another one, to assure the property will be retained forever and predominantly the condition reflected in the baseline documents. That wasn't used in the baseline documents. It wasn't there, didn't exist. I was involved with the application, and I know for sure that wasn't there. Seeks to conserve open spaces defined as land that is generally free of uses that would jeopardize the conservation values of the land. Another one such as scenic beauty, protected plants, wildlife, archaeology, and passive recreation values. Passive recreation values, I think mountain biking is a passive recreation, but there are aspects of mountain biking that I wouldn't consider passive recreation, simply because it's not really something that most people could use or do use. So for that reason, I don't think 3 point, and I know there'll be a lot of pushback on it, but I don't think, and I think I've made the arguments, it's not really an opinion, my feeling. I agree with yours. It's going to be hard to stop. Robert Wallace and I tried to prevent that. Once it became available, we tried to divert people from using it. Long before you were on the project, but and we weren't able to do that. One thing we could do is put signage right at the point where it leaves the urban trail. That would mean that 3.37 and 3.36 wouldn't be available and would be dismantled as a trail. And I think 3.37, which goes along the rim, will be a good trail at some point, and that's part of the loop of highway. But at this point, it dead end at section 17, which is local property. So really, if you leave 3.37 in there now, delete 3.36, I think you'll have a hard time keeping people off 3.36, and you will have a hard time keeping people out of section 17 because it just dead ends there. So that's my feeling, and I don't know how the rest of the commission feels. I understand this will be a hot debate for the reasons that I mentioned. But I would like to have both of those green lines off it. And that might help a little bit in maintaining, this would be a single point, not beyond this point. Since I'm talking, I have a few other things I'd like to comment on that again, about the trail and the whole system. I love the way you've used the roads. And they provide a number of different loops. They'll be easier to maintain in the long run. They will probably attract a larger number of people who may not be as good at riding bikes, but also horses and runners, bikers. It's really nice that you've made that as a part of the system. The other point I'd like to make is of the 18.8 miles of new trail, a lot of it is concentrated on the Forest Service section 13 and section 18 on the south. If you look at the map, the new trails on the rest of the property is quite sparse.
Yeah.
It's very sparse. Part of that is because there are some canyons and tanks and things that should be avoided, and you've avoided them. So I just wanted to make those points that some of the closest areas of access have the most dense trails, and the ones that are farther away from easy access are the least dense trails, and actually I think help support the intent of the conservation easement.
Great.
So comments or not?
Thank you.
Okay.
Please.
Yeah, I'm in support of what both commissioners have said so far. As far as, I support that 3.36 is not within the parameters of the guiding documents. And my question is like, if this, by the time it gets adopted and there's a grant and there's funding and it's put into place, that's probably several years down the line. How do you keep that trail from continuing to be, impacted? And is this something that, okay, if we say, yes, it's not part of this plan recommendation, is there some mitigation that can be put into place right now? So I would be interested to know, like, what was tried before when you saw this starting to take place. Was it signage that you tried to put there, or how did that happen?
Yeah, I can comment on that. Thanks. And thanks for the discussion on this topic. We did file a police report because of the amount of damage in this particular area. And we put up cameras because at that point, the trail was actually in the process of being built. And the connection down to the lower section of 3.36 did not quite exist yet. So we were hoping that might deter any would-be trail builders. And then we did sign the trail that letting the public know that this was not a trail. And at the same point in time, the Forest Service was doing some thinning in that direct area. So they helped us pile and like block portions of the trail with like pile burns. And as we know, those didn't actually deter. In fact, the 3.36 was built the remaining portion, even though we had a camera there. We suspect that a coat or something was thrown over the camera. So we don't have any legitimate pictures or anything. And I think that there is a desire for that trail to exist. And I want to acknowledge that it is in a drainage area. It is considered a more fragile location in the conservation easement than other locations that were being considered for trails. Our first proposal was not to include the trail, to restore it. Upon given our second round of comments from the public, there was a lot of interest to keep the trail. And so our second proposal was to include it, and that's why it exists on this concept today. So I also wanted to mention that 3.37 that kind of rides the rim, there is a plan for connecting that down to the trail system. So it wouldn't go into Lowell's property. But at this point, Commissioner White is correct that it dead ends at section 17. Well, there's a continuation of a social trail in section 17. But that would be part of the kind of down the road things that we're going to look at as far as it connecting it to section 17 as a possibility. And then the commission's recommendation, I think, is a really important part of this process. But the review process, I just wanted to remind you that it doesn't end at this point. Once we have a finalized plan that city council approves for us to use, there's a state process as well. So there's no state parks who has controlling control over the conservation easement. They'll have to review it. They have seen the plan. They didn't express any concerns as of yet, but they haven't looked at the nitty gritty of the plan yet. And then the State Historic Preservation Office will also have to review and approve.
Thanks for expanding on that. Hearing that, then I would be in favor of what Commissioner White said about, you know, at least for now, until this plan was enacted, until there was connection to 17 on the Lowell property, to maybe attempting to shut that down, decommission it for right now, so that it didn't receive further damage, not having it be part of this plan. And then revisit it later when there is that discussion and collaboration with the Lowell property.
Can we do that? Can something be shut down without this plan being adopted by city council or anything like that? I mean, I don't.
We can move this to like the long-term priority, which is what section 17 is in, and revisit it at that point. And then the plan that, you know, we take to city council, we could consider not including 3.36 and 3.37.
I mean, is there a concern of the sort of destruction of the area, like in the here and now, like right now? Or is this really just all part of the discussion for the future plan? I guess that, you know, maybe I'm bringing in another issue that hasn't been.
I think our initial concern was the trail building process. You know, the open space section wasn't consulted about the alignment or the sustainability of that trail. I'll refer to Mark here for as far as the sustainability of the alignment. My personal view is it is somewhat sustainable the way it was built. It seems to be done somewhat professionally. And I do think that the reason they're included in this concept is it does add some value to users for observatory Mesa. 3.36, although we want to make all the trails multi-use, it probably does lend itself to a mountain biking type of experience that we could show awareness.
Thanks.
I'd like to add to that, it's my opinion. But that premise has changed. It's not irreversible with time. But what was oak trees and oak covered bottom and birds and whatever else is now a bare rocky ravine. Just no, I don't mean the whole thing, just at the bottom of it. And as far as the design of it, there was no design. Follow the bottom, follow the true. Now the top part, I agree. That's 3.37 that dead ends at low profit. I think that's going to be a beautiful trail at some point. When it becomes a loop of some kind. And I also believe, knowing that section 17 by heart after 54 years, where enters section 17, 337 would be a perfectly good entrance into section 17. Because it follows the top of the rim. It's very close to where the reclaimed water line for the snowball is. The direct path to the new parking area that's gonna be there at the new Discovery Center. I think that new parking area is gonna be very popular, and I think section 17, whether it's allowed, whether it's legal or not, I think at least at this point, the observatory administration is kind of like, we won't say you can do it, we won't say you can't do it. Like, so with that parking lot there, I think 3.37 probably exists because it's so convenient. In fact, I think probably a lot of the folks that use 3.36 use that route to go there, even though it's not an official route. So all I'm saying is this potential in the future, it's going to be very difficult to keep that other than putting up a sign. That's the best we can do at this point, is just put up a sign. And say why? Because of conservation reasons. And the deed, some, not just don't go here. That we might get by until we have the money and the maintenance and all of the other things it takes to maintain this whole thing. So I think there's be a holding pattern here, but by taking it off map at this point, our intent is there.
Well, I mean, I don't think we have the authority to do that, right? I mean, we're talking about a future plan here, not like, or am I wrong in that assumption? Like, we can't just go change how trails are currently used, right? We're looking towards a future plan or not?
I think this discussion is for the future plan. Yeah, certainly the commission can make recommendations or suggestions as far as management if they might go to.
I mean, I guess there's other trails that were gonna be decommissioned, right, anyway, so that maybe there was more emphasis on this one because of what was perceived as a direct contradiction to the conservation easement, but if this just gets looped in with all the other trails that need to be decommissioned, then so be it.
If you look at the map, a decommissioned trail starts at that northwest corner up there and goes right along the lower property to 3.37. There's a trail there that's used a lot. But it also, there are fence cuts all the way along that trail to get into section 17. But that is a decommissioned trail that might be hard to decommission also.
Commissioner Thomas Sutter.
Hi. Can I ask a question? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm just wondering, can 3.37 exist? Is that a little pink connector that comes in at right along the border of 17 and down towards the bottom of where 3.36 is? Or does that whole group need to be signed and treated differently? Or can 3.37 exist without 3.36?
It can exist without 3.36. Once we learned from Lowell that their trail planning efforts were going to get put on pause for the time being while they work out the other planning. 3.37 originally extended into section 17 in Lowell property. Once we decided that we didn't want to include, going on to Lowell properties for any part of this, I guess, not long-term planning. I don't want to call it short-term planning necessarily. We started looking at, is there the option to lose the elevation from where 3.37 is now to connect down to that old roadbed that connects to the Foots Trail. And so it would require, in my estimation, it would require 3 climbing turns, to be able to lose that elevation in a sustainable way, but it is possible on Observatory Mesa Natural Area property. So that pink line that you're showing that's seen on the map is a concept, but that would show it losing that elevation without utilizing section 17 land.
I
So
mean,
the-
I really understand everybody's concerns about it, and I can see where Nat's coming from. I just wanted to say that I think not having designated directional trails is a good response right now on all the existing trails that we've got here on the map. I think maybe just an idea I'm throwing out there, but if we remove 3.37, 3.36, which have been, obviously are well known, and I think would be a challenge to decommission, or it would be a big effort. I think we need to provide a process beyond, just something to think about, but in the future, there probably should be a process if people wanted to suggest the development of a trail, that there was a process that they could put that in to the Open Space Commission or whatever group of people is managing this trail system, so that we didn't get more trails just built. Because this is a problem all over the place where trails get built and then it's just like, oh, we might as well just adopt it. So I'm just throwing it out there, because decommissioning this and having it not get used is really going to be a big challenge. And so maybe offering up, look, there's a method to get trails into the system, and here's the process to do it. It wouldn't be a big process like this. It would be like more of like a smaller process. That's just a suggestion I have in trying to solve this problem.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to be clear on my position one earlier. I'm definitely all for the bi-directional. I was against making this a mountain bike only in the attempt that it would be more appealing to folks if they could also use it. It could default to mountain bike only because of the way it's built and the technical difficulties, but not designating it as mountain bike only. I agree 100%, as I've said. I think decommissioning this is going to be tremendously problematic. And it's like what, metaphorically, no pun intended, what hill do you want to die on? And, when I look at the overall impact to the natural area, is the, I don't want to say is the juice worth the squeeze, because that diminishes the importance of it, but it's importance to that community, its longstanding historical use. There are some potential interpretation problems with the charter of this area, but I don't think they're fundamentally as written in stone as you're suggesting. I have a slightly different interpretation that recreation is a value that is to be potentially offered here. And I look at the small area and I kind of come away with leaning towards not decommissioning, but not saying this is mountain bike only. Like, everybody's welcome to it. It just happens to be designed by mountain bikers and in a way that's appealing to probably more to them than the average hiker. So I think that's kind of my position. Just for clarity for the rest of the folks that have different positions, that's open to continuing our chat about it. Because I think this is kind of the one thing hanging out here is right now is this area, this trail.
I use this term because everybody uses it. There's a rabbit hole here. And maybe Jackie had a partial solution to that. And that is that certain group in the mountain biking community say, see, build the trail, they'll adopt it. And there are several examples of that. One example is 310, where a mountain bike group developed that trail. It's done really well. And it's a trail that you can bike and you can walk and you can run, and it's done really well. But they just did it because they said they felt this is a easier access to get up on the top do their other mountain bike. So that's the rabbit hole we have to sometimes indicate that there's some places you're not supposed to go up there. And, there'll be other places that will show up. So I do think that for the time being, if you take 3.36 off the map, and maybe even 3.37 just for convenience, and put a sign up there. And say, this is not part of the plan, and you may not do this for another year or two, because it has to go to the city council. But at least our recommendation could be that, and they can change it. At least I feel better in terms of the deed restrictions, basically, the conservation easement. But I also feel better because I know what that used to look like, and I know what it looks like now. And it's gonna get worse. I know it's gonna get worse. And it does serve a small portion of the Mountain Bike community. Maybe vocal, but a small portion of it. And this whole thing is for the whole city. So. Oh, and back to Jackie's comment, I think that is a good way in the long run to address these unauthorized trails, which I'm sure they're gonna be built again up here. They will be. There'll be a shortcut here and a shortcut there. But if you have a process, it's like putting up a no trespassing sign. If you put up a no trespassing sign and don't enforce it, that's fine. But if you need to enforce it, you've got the sign there. And so if we've got these trails that might be coming up and we have a process, we can go right and say, hey, you can't develop it. You have to go through the process. We're not saying no, it's not a bad trail, but you have to go through the process. So I think that's a good idea and something that we should think about as far as all trail systems, actually. Including Buffalo Park in the Miller Mason area.
Any other thoughts from Commissioner Fox or Juan?
I agree with what folks say, so I won't repeat that. But in terms of the process, that one part of the plan would be to have some kind of contact for any issue with the plan, not just trails, but if folks have any concerns about the plan, here's how you here's who you contact and for review, and then we could develop a process internally for that, but at least we have an access point in the plan itself for any issue, not just trails.
So as a commission, we're in agreement that we're not gonna have single direction trails, right? We're definitely in agreement there. We have not yet arrived at a recommendation, at least as a group, about what to do with, I'll call it hot pockets, or is hot pockets technically 3.36, right?
Yeah, yep.
Okay. Whether or not we recommend decommissioning that or some other recommendation for this particular plan. Is that accurate?
I would just like to say that I'm actually, I know this is, I'm actually okay with the existence of those two trails. I mean, it is a small group of people that use them. I'm concerned about the fact that the trails got built and now we adopt them. Like, I don't want that it's just a poor precedence. That's where my concern is. I am concerned about their I mean, conservation impact. I am concerned about the impacts to the, I just don't want to set a precedence for like, oh, well, if you build a trail and cover the camera up and we don't know what you're doing, we'll adopt it in. That's just where I feel. But I also feel, I know that this is just, it's going to get attached to 17 eventually. it's gonna get used again and again, and unless you're dropping trees directly across it, which is a method that the Forest Service is using up on Schultz Pass, it's gonna be there. It's gonna be very difficult to get rid of. So I guess I almost didn't give a very firm answer what I'm feeling, but I just don't want to set precedents. That's all. But I'm okay with the trails. I just don't think we can get rid of them at this point.
Can you remind us, were there other social trails that were adopted as part of the 18 miles? Does that include any social trails that were adopted and formalized?
Yep. For right now, for this concept, it's 3.36, which is Hot Pockets.
Yep.
3.37, which is that traversing trail that Nat referred to. And just north of section 17, Nat also referred to this one, 3.10. Yep, right there. So right above that Foots Mars Hill labeling on the map. Those are the three that are currently on the map that say proposed for adoption. All of the rest of them are being proposed to restore.
Well, here's my thought then. You know, we basically have accepted to adopt two of them, 3.10 and 3.37. If we take out 3.36, we allow two to stay. We take out the one that's most impactful to the conservation easement by leaving 3.37 and that little V of a connection. It does create a loop between 3.37, that new little pink spot going down and connecting with the foots. I mean, so at least it creates a circle, a loop that can be utilized. And maybe there's an attempt to block off and sign and decommission 3.36, you know, as soon as possible, or when this is enacted, however that's, you know, chosen to happen. And maybe that's the compromise.
Yeah, and those, thank you for mentioning the loops, Commissioner Norton, because that was one of the mentalities with trying to figure out what to do with these areas, right? So like when we're looking at these trails to potentially adopt, they're both close to access points and they both create loops that don't officially exist right now. Thinking about, you know, we've had those discussions on, you know, the parking areas are not that close. The foots trails are, it's difficult to get up there, you know, trying to find opportunities for folks that either don't have enough time or aren't, you know, interested in going in a lot of mileage was part of the thought process in this. And so you kind of saw like some of those potential loops, and those are part of why they're in there, for sure.
And then at least 3.37 still leaves the future access point to 17 when that discussion comes about, but it still would create the loop, you know, down further down south without utilizing 3.36. So,
I would be happy with that, and I'm familiar with that little red section there. That's gonna be really challenging right there.
Which section?
Which one is that?
Between 3.37 and then there's the little red squiggle.
Yeah, talking about the squiggle.
Yeah,
Yep.
right down, can you point to it?
Yeah.
It makes a loop, 3.37 down to the Tunnel Springs Trail, back up again and around. That little section right there, that will be tough,
It's possible though.
but it's not one that a lot of mountain bikers, a lot of folks on bikes, I wouldn't call them mountain bikers, but on bikes would use.
I mean, it'll depend on the grades, right, of the trail.
Well, yeah, the grade there is steep and you've got just two switchbacks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and those legs of those switchbacks, like per the concept, might need to be longer. The departure from existing 3.37 might be further to the west than is indicated on the map right now.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
It all depends on turning platforms that are like naturally existing on the landscape, and then what that grade is in between those platforms. But you want to find something natural on the land that allows that turn without crazy amounts of digging, something that would be,
Yeah.
you know, inappropriate.
It's a very deep
Mhm.
section.
Yeah, it's steep terrain there. Yep.
So I'm happy with that. I agree. We may not be able to prevent it, but at least we could put an informational sign up there. Why? At this point, you might call it discouraged using it. Instead of, but in the long run, if we leave it there, the damage will only get worse. Nature can repair itself, so even if it gets worse, and we finally decide, see, this is awful, and we close it, it will repair itself, but I don't know, I'm just trying to not get to that point where it's so bad that it's not even a good trail anymore. You need to walk that area. You'd be surprised. You drop down in that little crevice and you don't even know the city is around or anything. It's just oak trees and birds. It's all right down to the center. There's about this wide at the very bottom. That is the trail. That is now just rocks.
Do you wanna, or do we need to have a formal motion for this? Or a recommendation?
I think the catalog, we need to memorialize it. That might be a good idea. Are we ready to, is that compromise as proposed something we want to consider as our recommendation? Adopt 2 of the 3 social trails as indicated on this map. The only one not being adopted would be Hot Pockets or 3.36.
I think we can do that as a consensus, but it's not an action item, so we can't vote on it.
Is that
Correct.
accurate?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I guess it is listed in this discussion item, but yeah, if we can get head done
Okay.
about what the preference is, that'd be great.
Because somebody. Oh,
Yes.
Before you close, just have a comment and a question.
Would you like to come in so we can get you all?
No problem. I had an earlier. This is new. I guess I'm just a little confused about what Chair Applin said about, the city and making changes, ahead of the formal recommendation. And my question is if it's city property, why can't the city, do something to 3.6 or whatever to discourage further degradation of that area? Yeah, I don't see why, maybe I'm not understanding the rules, but why something can't be done because, it is city property and to prevent further degradation, and still, doing the formal recommendation, when that time comes. So that was basically what I wanted to say. I'm just a little confused in my mind. I don't see why something can't be done. So that's it.
To sort of address that a little bit, this is Rebecca. I agree with you that the city has responsibility to maintain the area. It sounds like when the trail was being built, we worked to discourage it. I think based on that precedent alone, we could continue to do something now if that's what we wanted to do. Robert and I have not talked about this specifically, so I'm being a little bit hesitant. But I think in terms of what you just brought up, being good stewards of the city property, certainly if that was the direction of the commission. I'm not hearing super clear direction to do something right now, but I think we could if we really wanted to. Like if someone's out there doing something even worse than this, we're gonna take action to stop it. Whether this trail plan is adopted yet or not.
I just wanted to add on, I mean, if there was some sort of thing happening out of, Picture Canyon or Buffalo Park, it would be shut down in a sense. Just because we have a trail plan going forward, doesn't mean that we can't address, the degradation of this one area outside of the trail plan.
We would try.
Yeah,
It might not be successful.
I would go back to Bruce's summary. I think his suggestion is it's good that all of the three numbered ones, those are the adopted trails that existed. We support, except for 3.36 at this point. I think that's what you're.
Yeah, and to your point, and to Robert's, we can't vote. We just need to find consensus here. I think like, we all agree that that's the forward direction. And in terms of current action, I wasn't suggesting that nothing can be done. What I was trying to say is I was trying to focus on the plan and developing the plan. If there's current actions that we need to recommend, I think we can recommend really, I think probably anything within our charter. My point was that's not really part of the plan, like what to do right now, but I don't disagree that maybe something should be done. I don't want to suggest that I'm not saying, I'm just saying
It's not part of.
it's not part of the plan moving forward. So,
Which is the agenda item.
yeah, which is the agenda item. So I just don't want to stray too far from our charter and the schedule. So from a consensus standpoint, then are we comfortable recommending the adoption of two of the three social trails, the one exclusion being 3.36, commonly known as hot pockets?
Yes.
Yes.
For reference, Robert put some options on the screen. I think you might be past that already, but just based on, you want to explain what those are, Robert?
Yeah, these are just items I think that you were discussing as far as whether or not we keep both. That seems like that is not the recommendation. Recommend decommissioning 3.36 and keeping 3.37 and 3.10. Or I think the other option we briefly touched on was moving 3.36 and 3.7 into the long-term priorities and opening those discussions up when we are ready to move forward with Lowell. Since the connections to section 17.
so where we're at is basically discussing option right now is what we were starting to agree with. We were just decommissioning 3.36, keeping the upper 3.37 and the little connector loop as proposed, the pink connector.
Right.
And
3.10.
yeah, and then leaving the rest as proposed.
Yeah, to Robert's point, if we're open as a commission to potentially revisiting an item, if Lowell comes up with a plan for 17, then obviously we want to be collaborative. So I think as a commission, we can agree that we'd be open to revisiting any aspect of this pending what they decide to do up there. Is that fair for all of us?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and the same, if the Forest Service wanted to do something, not just the Lowell.
I agree. Okay, then I think for,
So is that at least, are there any that are not in agreement with that?
from Commissioner Thomas verbally, I think I heard her say yes.
I did say yes. Yes.
Okay. Then for those two outstanding items is no single direction trails, and then decommissioning 3.36, keeping 3.67 and 3.1.
Great.
And the
Yes.
e-bikes is-
We gotta get the e-bikes. We're gonna do that right now. All right, can you put that recommendation, would it be helpful if we had that recommendation slide back up with the e-bike things on there too, or ready to discuss that?
Yeah.
I can, with that options we were just discussing.
Yeah. So Robert, number one recognizes that the county has a pre-existing easement for the foots. Is that correct?
That is correct. Sorry, the loop.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can jump in, when you're ready. But we did meet with the county and have a little bit of direction.
just to throw it out, number one addresses some of my reasons for e-bikes and some of my reasons for not e-bikes. As I've mentioned, e-bikes does provide a way for the less athletic folks to get up onto the mesa. I mean, it really helps. I've seen it happen on the Mars Hill Trail. If the e-bikes were on roads and on the main trail where they're foot trail where they're allowed to go anyways, and that addresses that problem too. Then I think the conflicts would be less because the roads are wider. We'll be back to the same problem of enforcing and keeping them off the dirt trails. But that would be a compromise. Saying absolutely no e-bikes raises the problem, but already e-bikes are allowed on the foot trails. So that would be kind of confusing, I think. But if you said, because you can tell what a road is, you said e-bikes are allowed on developed foot trails and roads. That could be a sign. Again, it's like my trespassing analogy. You put the sign up, and if it becomes a problem, you have a way of addressing it. But if it's not a problem, the sign does the job. And if it's occasional problems here and there, that's life.
Do you want to provide some clarification on the count on the easement for the county?
Yeah, you bet. So we did have a meeting with
Oh, no,
them.
that's okay.
And they are moving forward to adopt Arizona state statute, which is allowing class 1 and class 2 on multi-use trails. So that will be, for example, implemented at Fort Hill. So they will be allowing e-bikes on those types of trails. They manage the section and have an easement for the section loop trail that comes up from North Tilly Lane and connects over to the Foots Trail. And so that will also be true for that section of the trail. As long as they're managing. I think that's it, kind of, in a quick recap. I think that there is some desire from the county for us to mirror like what they're doing. Just for ease of like communication to our community as well.
Does,
So- Sorry.
does the county have you said the county's going to allow this if they're maintaining it? What are they enforcing this? Like, are they going to enforce that bikes stay on what they say is the legal places for it?
They could put up signage along that trail since they do have an easement for it. And they do have some information already on their website about Arizona state statutes and the definitions of class 1, class 2, and class 3 e-bikes. Is that
And
your?
they'll reach out to the mountain bike rental places that have the e-bikes and like do educational outreach work?
I don't know about that, about what additional efforts the county's doing
Okay.
to educate the community. Yeah.
Will they maintain that trail?
They do maintain that trail.
The county does?
They currently do, yeah, they do own the easement, which predates the conservation easement.
Yeah, it does.
The purchase of the property,
And that is state line.
yeah.
So which trail is that on the map?
Yeah, let me,
3.3,
it's,
Oh, this was, okay. Got it. So that, okay, when they adopt their ordinance, at least as far as this area, that's the only trail that it will be
that's
affected,
the only multi-use, like single track trail.
that falls under their jurisdiction.
Yeah, so the Flagstaff Loop Trail is multi-jurisdictional, right? Some of it's on Forest Service, some of it's on city, some of it's county, some of it's private. No one entity like maintains that trail. So e-bikes are not allowed on the entirety of the Flagstaff Loop Trail. But there could be an allowance for e-bikes on sections that are managed by the Forest Service. This section being one of those sections.
You mentioning about the main thing, is that also enforcement involved?
I don't know the specifics of the easement. I don't know if it includes enforcement. I would assume that that would fall to our police department. Since it's inside city limits.
How do we feel about,
Can point that out that.
number one?
I sort of missed the beginning of your conversation. The Wi-Fi wasn't feeding in very well. But I'm assuming that means that there's no e-bikes on any of these trails that we've been talking about that are on the map, except for roads and foot trails. I think it's, if the county is going to propose that on their trail that they are allowing e-bikes, is that this 5.12 trail? Is that right?
That 3.3.
3.3.
I'm gonna move to the map just for a
Oh,
moment here.
3.3, sorry.
So this is where the North Tilly Lane connection is. It comes down into the neighborhood. This section, 3.3, is considered the loop trail that the county has an easement for. And that comes over and it connects over to the Foots Trail, which
Right.
city council, the city council ordinance that was passed a few years ago for e-bikes does allow e-bikes on the Foots Trail currently that comes through the natural area.
1 and 2.
1 and 2, yes. That's 1 and 2.
Oh boy, complicated. I remember that you also suggested that if there was a trail from Baderville, that there would be that an e-bike route from there would be, for commuters, would be thoughtful. And what, can you point that out? Was that on a road?
There was a consideration for Fort Valley for a route that could be e-bike friendly, and that would be Forest Service Road 506 and then 515A coming in and connecting to 4.34, which is also a road, which then connects down to the Foots Trail. So that is mostly on roads with the exception of the Foots Trail portion. There was a consideration of whether or not the Fort Valley Trail,
Right.
the Fort Valley motorized system should be e-bike friendly as well. That's the 4.41 here. So that is one of the options of a consideration, like whether or not that should be considered for an e-bike friendly.
Ugh.
Jackie, there, at the end of South Snowball Road, there is a road that goes up. It's steep in the very beginning, but it goes up and follows all the way along to 515. And so that would be for the Fort Valley area, that would be a transportation route option. And if we would go with one, which says the roads are open to e-bikes, that would mean that road would be open to e-bikes. And that would be a commuter link between Fort Valley and actually the city. And also to Gore, because I know folks that commute by bike when the weather is right from there to Gore. And that would all fall under choice one. It would all be allowed under choice one. The hiccup is that 3.3 belongs to the county. And I'm wondering if the county supervisor would be amenable to making it compatible with the rest of the trails. Not set in stone.
I have a hunch if that was the case, the county would want the city to take on
Maintenance.
that portion of the trail, including maintenance. And maybe even purchase the easement from them. Or get the easement from them somehow, don't you think?
That was my impression of the meeting too. Yeah,
Did.
And I'm not saying I have an opinion on that any direction, I'm just saying that's.
Well, one less easement. On
Sure.
the property might be good.
Certainly would simplify things.
I think we would still have an easement for the loop trail.
So what?
It's the loop trail we're talking
Yeah.
about, right? We would still keep the easement for the loop trail. Since that's a perpetual easement. And I don't think we would want to give that up, but
Yeah, the county has that though.
correct.
Yeah. And
And
they may not want to give.
we would probably keep it even if we owned it on
Yeah.
our property.
I see.
You see what?
Yeah.
So 3 is essentially the same as 1 with the addition of 5.12.
Yes, and apologize, but I think the label 5.12 is actually incorrect now.
Yeah.
That was on here. It's now 4.41, which is the Fort Valley trail coming in from the motorists.
Actually, both are right.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, my map labeling's bad on the map on slide 11. 4.41 actually refers to an existing road on Forest Service land right there. I biked that to get the GPS, so that's existing road, and then you can see where the dashed pink lines begin. That's all conceptual.
That's fine.
So it goes from existing infrastructure to conceptual, so it's split out. And this is for like GIS data, right? And so we have to show conceptual trails, existing roads, all that stuff, so the numbers are what they are. The series 5 are conceptual trails, so it is 5.12 all the way around, and then 4.41 is an existing road bed north of 180 on Forest Service land.
I'd be fine with 1. Recommendation 1. And not including 5.12. Is that proposed a single track? Natural surface
Correct.
track?
Natural surface single track, that's correct.
I would be comfortable with 1. I mean, they're gonna ride on roads. That's, I don't think anybody here objects to ride e-bikes being on the road. The floods already has sort of precedent and legal carve out. So and then we just try to, going forward, protect the natural surface trails, the new stuff that we're building and the other stuff that doesn't have e-bikes. And that's also probably the least disruptive in terms of the plan and confusion with the public and the messaging with other stakeholders and all those things. That's kind of my take.
I'm in agreement with that.
Me too. One.
Commissioner Fox, yeah.
It's just that 1, for me, is awkwardly worded. I'd rather have it instead of in the negative, and I don't have the wording right now in my head, but e-bikes allowed. Permit e-bikes only on
maybe.
No pressure or what you type.
Yeah.
Develop,
Vice Chair,
develop foot trails, I mean, it's a confusing, all trails might be foot trails in some people's mind, but to develop foot trails, I don't know how you describe that. Control.
Commissioner Thomas, you had a comment?
I really like what I think this is good. I like the rewording too, because I think it's really important that it's very specific as to where bikes can and can't be so that anybody can understand that, because you know, some of us do point out to people that you can't ride your e-bike here, even though it doesn't probably make any difference. I just think it's the simplest one to enforce and to explain and to make signs about. And if we can get the language right, I like one a lot.
One is changing.
Well, I heard some thoughts about Trail 3.3, and I just wanted to make sure I captured that as well. I mean, it seemed like you had maybe a recommendation or whether or not we should just go with kind of direction on 3.3, or if we need to continue conversations to see if they'd be interested in aligning 3.3 with the rest of this direction. So it's this second part that I think we need some additional feedback on. So,
I see zero downside to seeing if they'll align with the vision of this plan. I think
Yeah.
the worst they can do is say, no, we're not interested.
Agreed.
And the fact that the loop trail has places where e-bikes are not allowed. So we would be setting a precedent on the loop trail.
Wait, so I just want to make sure I'm understanding. Are we suggesting? So what do you mean by working with the county to align with this direction, meaning that e-bikes would not be allowed on the loop trail?
yeah, I think that would be the implication.
Would we make in the, maybe item 2? First one is like the e-bikes, roads and foot trail. And number 2 is regarding to 3.3. We're working with the county.
So two separate recommendations.
Because the first one is we are solid, but number 2, we are still working on it.
When we spoke with them today, I don't know whether you have all the information, so what is that? Yeah, what is this? I feel like they're resource
Yeah, he's a trail manager.
manager. They were really looking to him, and he was saying e-bikes are coming. They're more prevalent every day. He thinks strongly that the Forest Service, which does not, I get myself confused on this, so I have to ask. The Forest Service does not allow e-bikes right now.
That's correct.
He's pretty convinced that that will change over time. It might be 10 years before the rules change, but they're out there all over the place and no one's enforcing it. And I think that was leading into the county's recommendation to allow e-bikes on the loop trail. And that it would be, even though the loop trail goes through some forested areas, they want consistency. Because it is difficult if you're riding along on an area that is okay, and then you're like, wait, now I can't keep going. Like, where am I supposed to go with my e-bike? So that was some of the conversation that we had this afternoon.
I think there's a counter argument to that, in that this is going through a preserve it's a special situation, and we're going across, it goes across private property too, the trail does. And that's why
And
there's different
future
rules. And I think it's a decision that the supervisors could help us with. And I think they would be, I can't speak for them. I think it's worth it going the next level up in this discussion, but as far as this is concerned right now, one is fine with me, and it gives us maybe a few weeks or months to investigate a little bit further with the county, with the argument that this is going to a preserve, and we have such and such reasons that it would be compatible with the preserve not to have e-bikes on this single track trail.
So given the recommendation or given our charter here to make a recommendation, or everybody's, to your point, we're all aligned with the first two parts of that recommendation. That working with the county, I don't see any harm in asking for that. I do understand the county may very well be vested in creating a loop trail that can be consistently traveled by one mode of transportation and not segmented, and I get that entirely. I also understand that since it's coming through a preserve, maybe it's our job to try to say, can we work with you in some capacity to modify or limit that? With no real detail here, because we can't predict the future and we don't know which direction they're gonna go. So in this moment, maybe we go with number one. Because that county thing it's out of our control right now, but those first two things, we can certainly recommend that. And if we agree on that, head on as a commission, that we can move forward with that. Commissioner Thomas, are you in agreement with that?
Yeah, I am. I mean, as somebody who's worked with the Forest Service for many years in wilderness areas where there is no mechanized use, I do not see the Forest Service changing their mind about e-bikes. I mean, it is going to be, they'll have to go through an entire EIS. It would be such an issue. But I think it's really important to have discussions with the county. And the fact, just as we stated, I mean, you can avoid natural areas by having alternative routes provided that would loop you back onto the loop trail if you are on an e-bike. I mean, that does happen in a lot of places. So I'm really comfortable with one. And I think maybe instead of saying work with the county to align trail 3.3 with this direction, we could just say and understand the county's position on trail 3.3 or something like that. Like, just have conversations with them. I mean, yeah, as you said, we can't read the future. Thank you.
Everybody
So
comfortable with that?
that changed the intent for me a little bit, rather than encouraging the county to go no e-bikes, at least through Observatory Mesa. This is just, what this says to me now is understand that their position might be e-bikes are allowed and we're okay with that, but that's not what I'm hearing.
No, I think we need to add, understand the county's position on trail 3.3 and work to align in some way. I think there needs to be an active verb there other than just understand their position. That's my opinion.
Is everyone in agreement with that? And Vice Chair Thomas, would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And Councilmember Harris has her hand up, just.
Oh, okay. Councilmember Harris, you have a comment?
She's having trouble with her mic. earlier. Councilmember, we can't hear you.
Okay, not able to hear you. Go ahead, Mr. Mock, sorry.
I don't know with what aligned direction with means. Because when I think direction, I'm thinking north, south. Is it we're trying to align this recommendation?
I think it means that, I would do want to make it clear, but I think what we're saying is that if we say no to e-bikes on the loop trail, we want to make sure there's an alternative route provided so that that can happen. And if we say yes to e-bikes on that loop trail, then we work with the county to understand how that's going to be enforced and managed. So like, those are the two directions we could go on that one. Am I correct?
Well, I think our ultimate goal would be to have consistency.
Yeah.
So we want to ask the county to align with our guidelines on trail usage for e-bikes. That's the end goal. And they may say no, and we'll have to work with that little part out. But yeah, that's how I perceive our efforts.
Consistency is the operative word, I think.
Yeah.
Rather than money.
So we want to work for a consistent policy with respect to e-bikes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's important to say that we want to work with the town.
I think got the gist. I realize that I'm not much of a wordsmith here, but I think I got the general
Yeah,
idea.
I think we're
Yeah.
okay. We could focus this all night. So,
So,
We don't want to do a university and wordsmith.
yes. Okay, so I think we're all in agreement on this, on number one. So that should close us out on item 6A, the Observatory Trail Mesa Planning, unless there's any last comments or thoughts and any directions of staff on that.
Yeah. We said e-bikes. Maybe are we making any kind of a recommendation on e-bike class 1, 2, or 3?
the current city ordinance is for class 1 and 2. It does not include class 3. I think staff recommendation would be to continue that use.
Nightmare 2 and 4 is but
Consistent.
I think it's important to keep that.
Any other thoughts or comments on 6A, Observatory Mesa Trail Planning?
Councilmember Harris is typing, and so whenever we get that, we can read it in.
Okay. And she's actually up next under reports and updates. Hold for her input.
Member Harris, do you want to try your microphone again? First of all, well, I guess before we move on, are we good on Observatory Basin Trail Plan now?
Yeah, that completes the themes.
So
As far as we had from a couple meetings ago, we worked through it all.
Deserve a round of applause.
Yeah. Really appreciate it.
Congratulations. I don't know what we're
Yeah,
gonna work
just
on.
to- for next steps, we'll make these revisions. We'll sit down and review the recommendations as a group, and then we're gonna make some revisions. We'll bring that back to you. Okay, hopefully June. Okay.
In the interest of time, can we move to 7B and then come back to 7A when Commissioner or Councilmember Harris is either the microphone works or typed input is ready to go?
Sure.
Okay, Commissioner Norton.
Yeah, we continue to have discussion and presentations about, the regional plan and the land availability and suitability study and the accompanying code analysis project. And which always comes up in a subtopic sort of manner, with regard to the JW corridor. At P&Z last week on the 8th, we got an update and a review of the preferred scenario that has emerged as part of the process for the new regional plan. And so we touched a little bit on the JW area, and Sarah Dector sort of explained it as that maybe it's not so much a specific plan anymore, but she was referring to it as more of a sector plan, which I asked her to define the difference. And, specific plan would be more of a guide to the development before it happens, versus a sector plan being the ability to identify the needed infrastructure only. So that's sort of this diminished or reduced idea of the JW area. So I bring that up because, I had mentioned it before. I'd emailed Robert and some other staff members with some questions. So I thank you for the email conversation that we had, and putting it on a future agenda item. I think it would be really helpful, if somebody can give our commission that update for both the JW alignment and the whatever this sort of plan that it is now, as well as the LAS and CAP things that they're working on. And even though, we get our staff representation and Robert and Rebecca, at those discussions, those internal discussions, I just think it's important for us as commissioners and the public, to be in the conversation. Because, I've noticed that even when we or the public tunes in to participate, a recurring concern is, what about open space and what about natural resource protection? And, what we learn is that by law, open space, at least our definition of open space, can't be required of a new development. So it's not always represented in the manner that maybe we would like it to be represented in these guiding documents that are going through revisions. And natural resource protection, from what I'm seeing, it's being challenged a bit, not only by development applications, but also because what they're finding is just the mathematical figures of resource protection and the desirable higher density numbers. They're almost impossible to achieve, which, is affecting housing, its costs, and natural resource protection. For the first time last week, we had a case that asked for a small variance in slope protection. And I'd asked, has that ever been done before? And it hadn't. It was very minute. It was like 1.5% reduction. But it was explained that maybe more of that will come to us because some of the parcels that can be developed at this point in time are more difficult to build on and have more slope and things like that. So we might see more cases that would ask for those sorts of variances, or there would be code revisions in the future, which is why they're doing that CAP study. All of which makes open space potentially further down the list of getting the attention that we would hope that it would have. But so that's my take on what we're seeing and discussing at P&Z.
Thank you, Commissioner Norton. Any questions for?
Just thank you for being intent and having balance on both sides of this. Really valuable.
Councilmember Harris, are you, your microphone working?
Looks like she has dropped off the meeting, so.
Okay, so given her absence, we will skip the council representative report and move to 7C, open space management report from staff.
I think the only thing I have to report on is that we're in a second round of interviews for our open space coordinator educator position. And so we're hoping to wrap that up this week and get somebody on very soon. But we've been spending a fair amount of time doing that. Sylvia, do we have anything else that you want to mention?
I actually have a printout of all of our upcoming events for this summer,
Thanks.
for all of you. Participate as you will. And you may notice out at Picture Canyon, at the Pit House overlook, that we're putting down wood chips on the trail there to keep people from sliding down the trail
Yeah,
and to protect them.
our RTP project will be continuing. So if you're out there, you'll see work going on both on social trails and unauthorized trails, and then also the main trail. That's work that will continue. We have some work that will be ongoing over in Observatory Mesa, doing weed treatment over the summer and restoration for some of those old splash pads where there's a lot of chips in the ground. So if you're over there this summer, you'll see that.
Need to test any weed abatement concepts. I have an address you can.
Yeah.
Thank you. Information items to and from commissioners and staff.
I promised you an update on the BBB code updates, and we presented that to council on the 23rd. And they were amenable to moving forward with the code changes. So we were planning on doing the first round this week, actually, but we had some issues. So first read of the code change ordinance will go before them on June 4th. And second read will be on June 18th, which is still perfectly fine in terms of timing.
Was the hiccup concerned?
No, it was internal. Understanding how to do the process, actually, because we have to do a resolution and an ordinance because it's so many code changes. It's a lengthy document. Yeah, we just needed to figure out. And there's been a lot going on the last couple of weeks.
Good news, good news.
And Councilmember Harris looks like she's back on. I don't know if we want to try to, can you unmute, Councilmember?
Yes, I just did. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry about that. I'm not sure what's going on, but anyway, I really didn't have anything to report out other than just to encourage people to come to the Saturday water. And then the comment that I was going to make regarding the earlier discussion was just to make sure that we're doing as much as we possibly can to make sure that people understand the different where they can do their e-bikes and where they can't. Because we don't want to frustrate people, because we want them to continue to use their bikes and their e-bikes. So we don't want to get them all frustrated, and I don't know what they would do, but probably not obey the rules, and we don't want that. So that's all for me.
Thank you, Councilmember Harris. That brings us to, unless there's anything else on 8 informational items to and from commissioners or staff, that brings us to 9, our potential future agenda items, the JW Powell alignment update, land availability and suitability study and code analysis project, and then finally the feedback from the Observatory Mesa Trail Plan update with the recommendations that we've just had. Any other potential future agenda items that we need to consider adding?
We did have one request from the commission a while back about open space preservation and development process from Tiffany Antol. She was not able to make it next month, but I will continue to try and see if we can't get that on a future agenda. I think that would be a good topic for us to discuss and I guess some ties to resource protection.
Great. That brings us to adjournment. And right before we have a motion on that, I just want to thank everybody, my fellow commissioners, for the diligence with which we approached this and reaching a recommendation and moving the agenda along, and the collaborative effort with which we all work with each other. So thank you for that very much. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We don't have to vote on that, right? We can just adjourn. All right. Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.
We can't adjourn because it's not 6 o'clock. 6:30 and we haven't done that one time.
I'm like, up and down.